Glad you are here, right? We'd like to welcome his family. Thank you for coming to share in this wonderful day. I want to give you a little bit of a history of how we got Mr. Bill to participate. As all of you know, he loves to advertise for his beautiful wife and all that she has done. And he kind of stays quiet about himself until we came across some photographs when he was trying to show some of her stuff. And we kind of lured him in. We asked him, please, please, please be our August artist. So this is actually a little bit more of a my life story like we did for Pat than necessarily just artistry, because it's basically his whole life up here. I told him his whole life in one place, kids and all. So I'd like to welcome Bill, and he's going to share his story with you.
Well, thank all of you for coming out, and I look at all this and where do I begin? As a young kid, I was always interested in design and aircraft and spacecraft and marine life. And back in 1953, I designed a model here. Where's my helper? Come here. Put your shoes on. It was in the Long Beach Independent Press Telegram back in 1953. Hold it up so you can see it. Yes. And that's in the picture on the bulletin board there. And so that kind of got me started off. And when I finished up, I worked in aerospace and worked on the space shuttle and worked on the, I kind of will go back and forth here. As you know, this is the space shuttle and the solid rockets on the side and the center big tank here. And in the back of the spacecraft, that's where our lines are. These are some of the lines that I drew. And they feed from the skin of the spacecraft to the engines was our company's responsibility on the space shuttle. And we were really upset when the one spacecraft did not make it, and they launched too cold of weather, and the seals in the solid rockets could not stand the cold temperatures, and so it destroyed the whole spacecraft. And we thought, oh no, is that our lines? Because we do also have exterior lines on the big rust-colored tank to get fuel from that to the spacecraft, and our other lines are these big lines that get the fuel to the spacecraft. So that's kind of where I ended up, and that's where I started, and this is sort of all in between. And you know, I started out drawing plans for apartment complexes, and then for Carl's Jr., the Carl's Jr. restaurants. I was a project coordinator for the design of the Carl's Jr. restaurants. And I was just a novice, and I didn't know really that much. I thought I knew a lot. I went down to San Diego to the planning department with all of our plans to build a new Carl's Jr. in San Diego. And behind the counter, they asked me, how many hose bibs do you have? Now, who here does not know what a hose bib is? Well, there's a few of you. Well, I found out. I was kind of, you know, that took me back. And so what a hose bib is a thing that comes out of the wall, and you attach your hose and water your lawn with. And this is one of my projects here. It's called My Plumber's Friend. And this is a hose bib sectioned. So that's what a hose bib is. I found that out. And then I also worked up in the mountains for a camp where I did a lot of construction, and I started working on this building right here. It's a chapel up in the mountains. I started working on that, and then I got pulled away because I was going on a world cruise. So I wasn't able to finish working on this. But that's one of the projects I worked up on the mountain. And what was kind of odd, I did construction and night watch duty and traffic control and get the kids back to their cabins, to the correct cabins they should be in. And I drove power wagons and dump trucks. And so I was collecting all the trash in the camp, and I took it down the dump, and I backed up to the edge of the cliff well, I really didn't go over, but just about that close of going over the side of the cliff with a dump truck.
Oh my gosh.
So, as you go through life, you have different experiences and you learn. And then one of my first jobs was working in a machine shop, general machine shop work, and I was working on a drill press where you pull down on it, you have a piece of metal there, and you drill a hole in the metal. Well, there's this chip of metal starting to swing out around and around. And I thought, well, gee, I don't want that. So I grabbed it to pull it off. Another learning moment. So I've done some dumb things in my life. But then, actually, my son's not here, but my older daughter, Kim, is right here. And she's in a lot of these pictures. And as an example, this is my son, David. He was on a cover of a publication. And then also this album jacket with my photography on the back. I have a picture I took of my grandmother, and I sold it to a publication, and they put it on the front cover of their publication. So then also I did the designing of, like over there, cabins. There's a little A-frame mountain cabin I drew plans for. I built a model of it, and they put it in the Los Angeles County Museum of Science and Industry for a while on display. And then I also, this is a underwater hotel that I was a co-designer of, and we built a model of it, and it was flown over to Brighton, England for an international show. And then they also had the model on display in the Smithsonian Institute. And I don't have I tried to get the model back, but somewhere along the way, I guess some kid wanted to play with it. So I never got it. But I wanted to do something with that. That was many, many years ago, 50 years or so ago. And I was communications with Howard Hughes and with Prince Rainier of Monaco and Jacques Cousteau, the underwater guy. And I presented a presentation to Disneyland. I thought maybe that they could put that in one of their parks. And I thought at last, well, maybe they'll make a toy out of it. So I presented it to Mattel's none of those things were successful. So when you go through life, some things you succeed on and some things you don't. But you got to try. And then this is my pattern making and foundry class in college, and this is where you do a sand casting, and I designed the different instruments. Like here's a finished part here of a scoop, and then here is it in the wood stage, and you put it in the sand, and then you pour molten metal into the cavity, and then you come up with the product. Then you have to, it has on it like, you can't see it too clear here, but this along the edges is real rough, where the metal leaks out between in the sand. So you have to go and you have to clean it up. So then you come up with like a finished product. And then in my photography, I started with Carol. She said, why don't you send she was doing writing and she was doing her illustration of her short stories. She said, why don't you send your photographic work to various publications. So I started doing that, and that's where most of these pictures have been bought by various publishers. And one thing that I don't have the picture up here, and I think there's a good reason I don't have that up here, is because you're supposed to get a